Hey, listen up. Yeah, we here and we locked in. Let's keep it going all the way to the top 10. We fear the turtles, so it's no other option. Fred and Ryan, just watch them. Let's take it to the max. It's the Shell and Tell. They come with all the facts. It's the Shell and Tell. Let's take it to the max. It's the Shell and Tell. They come with all the facts. It's the Shell and Tell.
It is Wednesday, September 27th, and we are back with another episode of Shell and Tell. Fred back in the house trying to get a little Maryland talk going. It's an exciting time to be a Maryland fan, and we're here to talk all of it, whether it's Sparty, the Hoosiers, the goods, the bads, the uglies of this last game, and just what we feel going forward as a Maryland fan.
Yeah, man, it was yet another big win for the Terps scoreboard-wise. You look at it 31-9. If you're just an outsider looking in, it looks great. But to me, this is a game of dominance at times, a game of some lulls at times, some trick plays, some lucky breaks that kind of fell our way. It was a little bit of a hodgepodge of everything in this game.
It really was. You really thought you were just going to have a 70-0 win like the Dolphins did this week when the game started, and then all of a sudden we couldn't get anything done. So really, really strange to see that. Every game this year we've had like a different problem, which I think is both good and bad. Like if we're having the same problem every week, you're like, maybe we can't fix it. Yeah. But literally if you go back, Towson, the complaint was no turnovers. We're now, second in the country in takeaways, so that problem's absolutely gone. Then you go to the next week, and you had the fumble issues, especially on special teams, and the next week that's replaced with somebody else, and that's gone. And you had your other issues with the lull in the second half, and here we are, and the slow starts again, the 14-point slow starts.
That's what I was going to say. The one consistency that we've had, at least the last couple games, is falling behind early. They didn't give up 14 to start this game. You and I kind of talked about, does Michigan State come out and get us with the same type of thing yet again? But they didn't. They didn't actually pull a trick play. They did another flea flicker. I think it was in the second half. I thought, oh, there it was. They came out of halftime trying to catch us off guard there instead of the beginning of the game. But again, Terps end up winning this game 31-9. First win at Michigan State since 1950. It's been 53 years since this team's won up in East Lansing. That's crazy to me. It's just kind of mind-blowing. I mean, I know Michigan State has been a good football team for a while, and I know we're fairly new to the Big Ten and all that, but 53 years, that's wild. Yeah,
it is wild, especially since we have beat them at home, since we joined the Big Ten. We had a couple close shots where we just couldn't pull it off. I remember Walker running all over us in the late in the fourth quarter to save their game for them a couple years ago. So we have had our shots, and we finally took one down. It's just that bucket list Big Ten things keeps going, and I got one in 2 weeks that I'd really like to check off that list.
Yeah, you and me both, for sure. Well, let's talk a little bit about this game, man. Let's get into some defensive takeaways in this game, because like we said, first thing was first. Don't give up 14 points to start. Check. They accomplished that, right? We knew that this team was going to move the ball, and if they were, it was most likely going to be on the ground. Their running back, their bell cow, Nate Carter, transfer running back out of UConn, had a very solid game in this game, 19 carries, 97 yards. Had some chunk yardage at times. His longest was 19, though. I mean, so consistently, he was able to carry defenders and get that 4 to 5 yards of carry in this game.
Dude was an absolute beast. Looked like a man-child. They were showing highlights of his weight room tape. Like, who knew you could get that guy out of UConn? Like, UConn football had him sitting over there winning nothing, doing nothing.
Right. Exactly. I mean, that's been a trend of Michigan State for years. I mean, they've always had really good, legitimate backs. They seem to find them everywhere. But to get this kid out of UConn and come in and play the way he's playing in the Big Ten is pretty impressive. It does raise some question marks maybe on the defensive line. Like, what's your thoughts here 4 weeks in? What, as far as run defense specifically, how are you feeling about the front?
I mean, we've been talking. It's definitely the weak point of the defense for sure, and possibly the whole team. We've had so many transfers out from that like loaded D-line class that we got a few years ago. We have a few left that are good, not great. And when we pulled in all those 4 stars, we were looking for great. Those guys also seem to just be continuously nicked up, tiny injuries, whether it's half a game, a whole game, what have you. King Basode was on the sidelines again with some kind of ankle thing going on. Isaac Bunyan, who was a surprise for us and a great thing to find on this line, it was out for this whole game. So there's been issues, and the issues continue to grow. Luckily, we've had our safety play, which has been huge as an extra man in the box to be able to help out and get things going. But really, I think that running back was gonna get his.
Yeah.
I do think that they could have been slightly better with the right players, but that's one of those players that just is better than the average Big Ten player, and he's gonna do it.
Right, and it wasn't just Carter. I mean, even their quarterback, Kim, early on, he showed his athleticism, was kind of able to move around in the pocket and extend some plays with his legs a little bit here and there. So yeah, I mean, containing the run to me is definitely going to be, I think, the focal point of this defense of what they really need to work on improving. But man, let me tell you, you mentioned it earlier. This team and the turnover rate that they're on, they're one of the best teams in the country as far as turnovers. They just the ball continues to find them. Maybe it isn't always that they're making these great plays. The ball just seems to find them. 5 turnovers in this game, and scoring off those turnovers to me was the biggest key to this win. I mean, they scored, I think, on 3 different turnovers, which is huge.
Yeah, and the turnovers the differential could have been even better, because I don't think that the Michigan State interception in the end zone should have counted. His foot came back up before he had control of that ball. Right. And I also think we had another one on the sidelines that looked awfully good. But, what are you going to do? It's Michigan. They stole 3 fake interceptions last year versus Talia. They're going to do what they're going to do. Michigan is kind of like the North Carolina of the ACC. You're just not going to get calls when you're up there. So you have to just beat them. You cannot depend on anyone else. You have to beat them by 21. That way they can't steal 7 late to hand it back to the pride of the Big Ten.
Yeah, just you got to go in there knowing you're playing against 12, 13, 14, 15, however many guys it is when you include all the refs into it. But either way, the Terps were able to do that, man. You look at Bo Braid in this game. He ended up having a pick on the very first drive of the game, kind of got the tide rolling in the right direction. The terrible read by the quarterback, Kim, on that, by the way. Just didn't see Braid at all. Braid hopped right in front of the crosser for the pick. He also
it looked very similar to Talia's interception for pick 6 against Charlotte.
100%. Very similar.
With that in mind, I was looking at the lead. We said the second in the takeaways in the country. They're also tied for 11th in scoring defense. And I didn't really understand scoring defense as a stat that much, so I deep dove into it a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So scoring defense is kind of an imperfect stat. It's literally just the points scored against your team. It doesn't discount the pick 6 that Talia threw, and so that is counted against our defense for some reason, even though they're not on the field. So we could be even higher without that pick 6.
Interesting.
And we could be way higher than number 2 in the country in turnovers if we would just got one against Towson, which we know we should have gotten more turnovers versus Towson.
Right.
So these stats that are already great could be unbelievable with those 2 differences.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But like I said, I do want to give kudos to Braid. Not only did he have that pick, but he saved a big play right before halftime on a throw to Franklin that he got his hand in and broke up that possibly would have been a touchdown going into the half, which I think at the half it was 21-3. So you change that 21-10. Michigan State goes into halftime feeling real good about themselves, and it could be a totally different game in that second half. We saw it. I mean, the team got off to a very hot start, 21-0, which we'll get into the offense here in a minute. But there were lulls in that third quarter, and there were opportunities that Michigan State had that just ended up being either dropped passes or just overthrown passes that could have swung this game in any which direction. And it definitely could have swung it towards Michigan State with a play like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first time we watched that play live, you were like, man, did we get lucky there? And then they had like a replay different that showed his hand just barely in there, that actually it was the defender doing it and not a drop. We got lucky, certainly other plays in the game with bad quarterback throws or drops, but they got lucky too with a Deshaun Jones drop late. So, that's just the way the ball falls, right?
That's definitely true. Speaking of falling, Tareeb Still with yet another pick on an overthrow late in the fourth. The State was in the red zone driving. This is, again, another one of those situations where Michigan State had a chance to score. I will say he jumps in front of this ball. He starts running. He ends up pulling a Daniel fucking Jones by tripping over his own feet. But it should have been a tutty for him. But again, he's another guy that the ball just keeps finding. He just finds a way to make a turnover.
What's worse about that whole play is the fall didn't even matter. It turned out that he had stepped out of bounds like 40 yards earlier with no defenders anywhere near him. I did find it funny on the post-game presser with Mike Loxley. You could definitely tell there was a difference in how he spoke about individual players, almost like protective of some and like knowing which ones like would take the criticism as like coaching and not like to heart. And he really went in on Still of like, what did you see on that interception? Whatever. He's like, I saw lack of field awareness. He should have, got his feet together and scored on that one and not walked out of bounds or something like,
Well,
like that.
I mean, in fairness, you're talking about a guy who's got to be a bit of a psychologist. I mean, you're managing 90 personalities on that roster, right?
Yeah.
You got to know which buttons to press, especially this day and age with these kids. You just don't know which ones.
Even Donnell Brown, he was talking about him later. It was like, how do you feel about his production? He's like, well, he's doing really good. He's doing good things, but I brought him here to get after the quarterback, and we haven't seen a lot of him getting after the quarterback. And I'm like, oh man, that's.
I mean, that's true.
Let's go.
It's true. The lack of pass rush has been concerning, but that dude is just a magnet for footballs. I mean, that fumble. He had no business picking it up. It just fell underneath his belly. He's like, oh, shit, here's a ball. I'm going to pick it up. It is what it is. But that guy every week finds a way to get a turnover. So good on Donald Brown. When things aren't going great for the defensive line.
You might as well be on your team, right?
Right, exactly. All right, well, let's switch sides. Let's go over to the offensive side. Again, team scored 3 touchdowns in their first 4 drives of the game, led 21-0 with 8 minutes to go in the second quarter. So, I mean, they got off to a real hot start. That's when things started to kind of slow down a little bit. But you look at Talia, what he was able to do in this game, 4 touchdowns, 3 through the air, 1 on the ground. Should have had a 4th in the air on that drop you mentioned by Jayshon that turned into a house field goal. Spread the ball around well, I thought, with catches from 11 different targets. Didn't take any sacks. I thought Talia played a very good game. I know he did have that lull in the third when he had the injury. He got that dead arm syndrome again.
The weird mystery injury on one of the softest tackles I've ever seen. Like, I think if I had to pick a tackle to be done to me in the whole game, it was that one. Like he like got wrapped up and he sat down on the belly of the defender as they rolled gently out of bounds, and he comes up just like totally dead arm again. You got to think that it goes all the way back to that Towson game where he did get crushed on the very first sack, and he had the arm injury that kind of you could see it hanging all game. There must be more of a nagging thing that was re-injured in some way, but it's so weird how that happens out of nowhere. Like he's been so good for the last couple of games, and it really took him a long time to not be showing the pain, and you could tell that he was airmailing some balls and just doing things differently, that he had to have something going on there.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, to me, it looked like he responded pretty quickly on the sideline. He went into the medical tent. He came out. He was flexing his hand. It looked like he had motion. They were trying to knock the ball out of his hand. So it looked like he got whatever was going on with it figured out pretty quickly. I actually kind of thought, I mean, if you've ever like hit your funny bone or you hit that nerve in your arm where your arm goes like, gets a shock through it the whole way through and it can kind of almost feel dead for a second. I almost felt like something like that might have happened when he was rolling over it on the sideline and then eventually just got his feeling back. But I think more of Leah's struggles. I don't relate it so much to the non-throwing arm. I think some of his struggles still, it comes from just pace of play. When they are moving the ball quickly and they're playing in like no huddle offense and they're in tempo, he seems to do better. But when they slow things down, when they get out to that 21-0 lead, or when they start feeling a little bit more confident or comfortable in where they are in the game and the game starts to slow down, I feel like that's where he starts to struggle.
Yeah, I definitely think that he works better out of the quick pace offense and can make the decisions on the fly, get on the run, get on the outside edge, and kind of play that backyard ball that he's so used to.
Yeah, agreed. Well, speaking of backyard football and a game full of surprises, Locks talks about maybe one of the biggest one of the game.
Well, we always try to use the personnel we have in our program, and we got a bunch of tight ends, but we lost some fullback bodies. Sean's one of those athletic guys. He plays as a reserve on defense. He's been a special team guy for us. And because of his athleticism, we've used him and Kobe McDonald the last few games when we've gotten in the goal line. We probably didn't see it initially because we hadn't thrown the ball, but he's been back there playing in our goal line package all year long. We saw a look on tape that allowed us to call him into the flat area. Leah made a nice, easy throw. And, Sean's one of those athletic guys, and it was great to see him make some plays.
Hey, we saw it. You all know we saw it. We talked about it after the very first episode. I don't know why. You always get attached to these random players on the team. Greeley, we knew someone that worked with his mom at first, and then we just randomly ran into his family while wandering through Michigan while we were out there for a game. And so we've always kind of been rooting for this kid behind the scenes. So when we saw him out there on offense, it was immediately a trigger that was like, what, do you see this? Are my eyes deceiving me?
I had to ask you. I'm like, is there another 22 on the team? Because that's the only one I know of is Greeley, and there he was.
Yeah, and it was Greeley. And then we talked about, as most people do, you have the bet for the first touchdown scorer.
Right.
Ended up not being Greeley. Clearly, that wasn't an option. Think about the future. All right, DraftKings, listen to me right now here. All right, what I need you to do is like a progressive pick your price type thing. I just need a board of all the players. And if I want to pick that the backup kicker is the first one to rush in a touchdown, you just tell me the number on that. You all figure out the back end of what I get paid if that happens. Because let me tell you, if you tell me I can put money on the backup middle linebacker to score a touchdown every week, I will put $1 on that every single week. And we would have got paid. We've been buying bowl tickets on $1.
It was, man. It was really cool to see this kid get involved. It's the kid that's worked hard. He's had to earn his playing time in his career here in Maryland. He's obviously been getting work on special teams here for a couple years now, but he's finally starting to get some play on the defensive side of the ball. But Locks, to his point, man, I mean, it's just talking about Greeley's versatility and his athleticism. And why not? If you've got that, why not use it in other ways and get creative with it? We lost Burns last year, so we don't really have that true fullback. You need another look coming out of the backfield, and nobody on that Michigan State squad expected Greeley to go out for a pass. He did. He ends up with his first career touchdown as a Terp. Had to have been a cool moment for the kid.
Yeah, Greeley said that they had talked about this all week, that they had been practicing it, and they said that, it's a time and place type thing, but this is the play this week. We hope to get in a situation where we can use this play, whether it be a 4th and 1, 4th and goal, whatever it might be. And so they called his number early and got it right out of the way, which I'm sure is also probably helpful to get that, like, when you have the anxiety of it being that first time, like, just get it. All right, first drive down. It's time for your play. We've been practicing it all week. Ended up being a Greeley sandwich, man. He ended up started the game with a touchdown, ended 3 tackles throughout the game, and ended the game with a forced fumble while on the kickoff team that led to the Terrapins' final score. Unbelievable game for a backup linebacker. Yeah,
our player of the game. You got to give it to a kid like Greeley, man. I don't know how many opportunities he's going to get that in his career, but he's our shell and tell player of the game this week, if it matters to you, Sean. But let's talk a little bit about the offensive line, because one of the things that I had been talking about really since the season started was this rotation and plug and play of different guys and trying to find the right combination of offensive linemen to be your starting group. Well, it seemed like this was the first week that they actually committed to a starting group. And what did you think of how the offensive line played in this game?
I think they committed. I think that's the big thing to take out of this. Okay. I mean, did they play a lot better than all the other line combinations? No. I think that he probably has the guys in the right spots, and they will grow together now that they had one game to see how it's working. Offensive line is a team more than any other part of the offense, defense, special teams. The offensive line has to work together. They have to know how to get these blocks done. There's tons of combo blocks. There's tons of different moves. There's footwork right next to other people's legs. It's a lot of work to do for a first time. So I do hope that some of the not so impressive running stats that we had this week were related to that, as well as Hemby having a bit of an injury that they talked about. They thought he could get through. Didn't really practice all week, but they still thought he was good to go. Didn't have many yards. So hopefully combination between brand new offensive line, which I think is totally locked in, especially since you look at they had 4 players that played all 66 offensive snaps. You had the center, Eric Harris, played 63. Purcell played 3 snaps. I'm sure there was some kind of like injury or equipment thing or whatever that he went in there for 3 snaps because they clearly wanted to have one line. Well, I remember Purcell getting a false start for moving the ball or doing something weird. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm 98% sure that in those 3 snaps, he got a penalty. So I'm pretty certain we have 5 locked in across the board. If you're at a 33% penalty rate, you're not the starter.
Yeah, I mean, Eric Harris, I will give him credit, though. He's improved a lot over the last year. I mean, the biggest issue I had with Eric Harris was snaps, high snaps, everything. I have not seen that this year. Snaps have not been an issue. So while I agree with you that run blocking is an area of concern right now, like just at least in this game, going into this game, again, you don't get Roman Hemby going in this game. You got 1.2 yards per carry. McDonald had seven yards per carry. So he actually had a pretty good game on the 5 carries that he had. Littleton was just under 4 yards a carry. So overall, they did okay. But where I was impressed with this offensive line group was in pass protection because they kept Leah up. They did not give up a single sack in this game. And that was one of the things going into this game that we were worried about. We said Michigan State was one of the top teams defensively as far as pass rush and that they could get after it. And to keep him clean in this game, I give the offensive line a grade B+ in this game overall because of that.
I agree, but you also have to realize that Talia himself erases about 3 sacks a game. There's plenty of times that
but he also, he's in his past will also give up 3 sacks by making ill-advised decisions and running around too long and not getting rid of the ball and that type of thing. So
I slightly disagree with you. What Talia does is he turns a 7-yard sack into a 18-yard sack. That's what Talia has done in the past.
He did that once in the last 2 games. One time. You used to see that 3 times a game.
But there have been plenty of times this year where they're right on top of him and he's able to run out. Some of the times he throws it away. Some of the times he's running too far straight back and it's still a problem and he somehow has been magically getting the ball away. It's still a thing that he needs to improve. But yeah, there were plenty of QB pressures, but yes, they did play well enough. And for the first game, I just hope we improve. You have one more practice game and then it's the real show. You all have to know what you're doing to play Ohio State. I think they can play exactly like they did this week and still beat Indiana soundly. So they have one more tune-up game as a group, which I think, if you really look at it, you got to think that Loxley knew this. You got to think that there were like 2 different levels of preseason ball. Like, I'm getting everybody experience, I'm getting my starters experience, and then we pray.
Well, you can't put everything out there for footage and for tape for other teams to be ready for and to be able to prepare for. You need to have that competitive edge. So I think you're right. I think there's levels to it and we'll see it progress. And hopefully it's this blend of perfection when we go against these hard teams that puts us over the top. We've been so close so many times against these blue chip guys. Maybe once this all comes together, it'll be enough to put us over the top. But before we move on from offense, a couple other things I do want to give a quick shout out to. Big shout out to Tyrese Chambers, the transfer in. He finally got his first career touchdown and gets involvement in the offense. I know things have been a little bit slow with him. Again, he's been dealing with some injuries. So if we start to see him get more ramped up, that just makes this offense even more lethal, gives him another target. Octavian Smith. I know we've been a little crucial on him, especially last week, especially with some of the issues he's had in special teams. But he got involved in the offense in many different ways. He got involved in the backfield on the end around. He had 3 catches for 57 yards, including the 31-yard touchdown he had late. So it's good to see him getting involved in the offense because, again, I think this team, I know the names that we had last year. I think this wide receiver core overall talent is much better than the wide receiver group that we had last year. And that's not a shot at anybody that was on that squad last year. I just think roundabout group and the depth that this team has at wide receiver, I think is a better group overall. And that's just going to help us moving forward.
Well, we can only hope that it is. I do want to say, like, if Octavian Smith, if we went a little too hard last week, the only reason we were critical is because our expectations were so high. Like, the game 100%. Before, I was looking at Octavian Smith, like, this dude is going to be an absolute, like, breakout wide receiver, and he will be awesome this year and a dominant player for us next year. And so for the very next thing we see is for him to be dropping kickoffs. It was just confusing more than anything else. It was concerning, but it was also confusing. And so that's why we spoke to him. Are you worried about the drought in the third quarter, or do you just kind of think that they were things within our control? Because there's two different ways to have a drought as a team.
Yes and no. I think droughts are two things. I think with us specifically, like I said, I think part of it is comfort and then getting away from that tempo, like I mentioned earlier. I think that's part of some of these lulls. And then the other part of it is this team, like you said, they're still going through changes and they're still, working different pieces in and working in different concepts that you're not going to be firing on all cylinders for all 4 quarters. And you don't technically have to against some of these lesser opponents that you've been playing for the first 4 or 5 games. So am I worried about it? We'll see. Let's get through this Indiana game and let's get to the next game once we get our first big test. And if we're still having the same issues and we're still having the same lulls, then yeah, I'll be concerned.
I think I'm not as worried as I could be because I didn't really see our offense stop working. I saw us not execute. There were wide receivers open. There were screens that were established. Whether he was a little bit too pressured, didn't quite have the delay block that he wanted and had to air it out a little bit more. The plays were there to be made, whether it was harder than it needed to be or not. They were there to be made. And so that's why I'm a little less stressed about the overall drought. If all of a sudden they make, defensive coaching changes and we don't readjust, that's a whole different story. Because that's, from the top down, which has been some of our complaints in previous years is that we didn't adjust as fast as others adjusted. And we haven't really seen a bunch of that other than our cold starts, the scripting issue maybe being a problem.
Right.
But I think I'm right where with you. I'm not totally stressed about it in the moment. Sure, you're always stressed about a drought because you think it's going to go wrong.
Right.
But looking back, I think the reason for the drought is less concerning than it could have been.
I agree with that for sure. Let's slide over to the third position group. Let's talk special teams because this was kind of a bit
Hot
of
and cold.
A roller coaster of a game for the special teams unit. It started with the fake punt, which to me, I could be wrong and I could be reading this wrong. And you and I kind of discussed this when we were watching it happen. It didn't look like a called fake, but it seemed to me like Colton must have the green light that if he sees something, if he sees an opportunity, go for it. And the reason I say that is because if you watch the replay, I don't remember who it was, but there was a wide receiver or a gunner that was on the side.
It was Dyches.
Or was it Dyches? Okay.
Yep.
He was off to the side, and he looked completely shocked when he turned around and saw Colton running.
He stopped blocking and looked for the ball.
Right. So either Dyches missed the call, or again, Colton just kind of took it upon himself because he had the green light and he saw something and he went after it.
All right, well, guys, you might know this or maybe you don't, but we just watched Fred diagnose that completely correctly in the post-game press conference. Loxley did confirm that no, he is not steel-balled individual to call a fake punt in the shadow of his own goalpost on 4th and 10. That it was a decision by the punter in the moment. He said because of the rugby rules that they allow, the steps forward towards the line, that he has the go in a certain look to take that opportunity. Whether he will be talked to again, that maybe 4th and 10 and maybe on your own 20, that wasn't exactly where we were thinking about that.
Yeah.
It still worked. And so maybe they'll give him a little bit of freedom. But yes, it seemed like Loxley was a little anxious about the fact he made that decision, even though by technicality he had the right to make that decision. Situation may differ in the future. But yeah, in the moment we looked at it the same way because Dyches turned around and was like, "Oh, you're running? I guess I'll turn and block again."
Right. Exactly.
It was very clear in the moment there. And Loxley did confirm when he was asked what made you call a fake punt? They're like, that's not me. Don't put that on my head.
All right, so Colton has some balls then, apparently.
Yeah,
this kid.
Yeah, Cole's a bit of an athlete. Colton also had a very good punt that was punted down. Should have been down in the 3-yard line. Great. We're talking about another good play on special teams, right? No. We had 3 people with an opportunity to down the ball, and they all looked like the 3 Stooges falling over themselves, jumping into the end zone, slapping at air. It was a very, very strange on that side. So I have a feeling this week they have been diving at the goal line and stopping balls a lot. I'm pretty sure that was right at the top of the practice schedule for special teams.
Right. No, I agree. It was that's definitely something they need to be working on every day at practice. Another guy I think needs to work on some things. Jack Howes, our field goal kicker. Like I said, there's for me, just what I've seen. I haven't really watched him a whole lot other than what we've seen this year. I haven't seen him at practice or anything like that. So all I'm privy to is what everybody else sees on TV. When I watched the Towson game, some of his kicks were a little weary. It was just the accuracy didn't see there, even there on the extra points and the field goal attempt. In this game, it was the same thing. I don't question his leg strength. This kid can make it from 55 to 60, probably in the right conditions. It's just the accuracy on things. Because in this game, you see his 2 shortest kicks, he missed. But his longest kick, the 48-yarder, he makes. So again, to me, it just seems to be some accuracy issues there.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I think that there's a couple problems going on here. Number one, we come off Ryland, who was a top 2 to 3 kicker in the country.
Bars high.
So it's going to be really hard to just feel great about our kicking game after that. I think that there are definitely some accuracy issues, like you said. It could be a combination of him, and it could be the whole team. We've seen the holder really having to spin the ball and rotate and get into place. Maybe there's some delay issues with that. So hopefully the whole thing gets a little smoother. I think that Loxley's been very clear in recent press conferences that there was no kicking competition, that Jack Howe has been the guy. Jack Howe was going to be our guy last year, except for the number 1 transfer in the country wanted to come here. So this is our kicker. So we have to hope that it works out. It is nice that he can try a 50-yard bomb in the right scenarios. Are we going to have to decide when and where we take those shots? Maybe. It is pretty insane that he missed the 29-yarder at the end. That's the one that's really scary. You don't want to be missing extra points. You don't want to be missing anything under 35. And if you miss things in the 40s and 50s as a college kicker, it is what it is.
And that's my biggest concern, especially when you're talking about wanting to take down a blue blood this year, right? All of those games have been close games. And last year, we had the secret weapon in our back pocket, having Chad Ryland, and he was able to keep us in that game at Michigan and go leg for leg with the other kid from Michigan who was also a national powerhouse kicker, player of the year type kicker. So that's my concern. I'm not saying you can't right the ship. It's just, that's a nice piece. It just goes to show how important an accurate field goal kicker really is to the success of your team.
Yeah, it's definitely important.
So we're, again, 4-0 for the first time in a long time. We crushed through non-conference play and we get our first win in Big Ten play. Looking at the rankings, I thought maybe this was a week that we would come close to cracking the top 25. What have the AP voters out there put the Terps at?
Well, Maryland, after winning all 4 of their games by more than 18 points for the first time in forever, they have drawn 20 votes in the AP top 25, which unofficially puts them at 31st. Okay. I still think there's some fraudulent teams ahead of them that's not going to be that hard to jump over. While drawing 39 votes in the USA Today coaches poll, sitting unofficially 29th. Again, a couple fraudulent teams, a few less clearly. I think that if you win this week convincingly, we'll be ranked. I think that they'll be somewhere in that 22 to 25 realm. I expect Colorado to get absolutely obliterated and stop receiving votes whatsoever, hopefully. I don't know how they received any this week, but they're still one of the ones in front of us. So there's multiple basketball schools other than us that are still winning and undefeated. A Kansas that doesn't really probably belong there. So we'll see. Are there big brands? Sure. But I think that the combination behind Maryland being a bigger brand than it used to be, the DC market, and the fact that we're matched up with Ohio State, I think all you have to do is win convincingly this week, and we'll be ranked for the first time in a while.
That's exciting. I mean, that's exciting. I know, was it 2 years ago we were ranked going into the Iowa game? I think they did that mostly because they wanted it for the primetime, the primetime game. But
So I thought the same thing, but Googs corrected me. I looked back and we were not. The last time we were ranked was when we beat 23 Syracuse. Remember that year I slapped you on the chest and said, "What if we win the Big Ten?"
Yeah.
Win the Big Ten.
Wow.
That's actually the last time we were ranked. Apparently, we probably did the same thing last time and predicted we'd be ranked for the matchup, and that's why it's burned in our skulls. 'Cause I was arguing with them online, but yeah, we were not ranked for that Iowa game, which kind of blew my mind. So I could be wrong again next week, but what do you have to do then? Because what are you gonna do if we lose to Ohio State close? Do you then rank us? How do we go from unranked to ranked in a loss?
Yeah.
Like, you have to just put us there. Like,
Right.
Otherwise, we have to win the next two before we're even going to sniff it.
I think if you played a clean football game and you cover in this game, which right now the Terps go into this Indiana game 14-point favorites. If you more than cover, I think we should be ranked. If we're really sitting on the cusp of that 29th to 30th range, we're talking 5 or 6 spots that we need to move in to crack the top 25. I think if you cover at home like you should and play a clean football game, I believe we'll be in the top 25.
Well, Locks has got something that he thinks would help with that, and you guys out there and all your friends could help. Let's hear what Locks has to say about what's going to help win this next game for our Maryland Terrapins.
We're back in the shell next week against Indiana. I hope our fans show up for these kids. They've earned the right to have you guys there to support them, and our student section has done their part. Now everybody's got a part to do in there, and I know we're excited with the opportunity to go 5-0 at home in the shell, and the players are excited about that as well. So with that, I'll open up the questions.
I'm actually glad he said this because last week I took a soft stance. I've had some feelings about the fan support for a while now that I haven't vocalized on social media or on the podcast or anything like that. And Loxley 2 weeks ago during his press conference talked about the student section and showing out and giving kudos to the student section, which rightfully so, the student section deserved it, right? But I also, in the back of my mind, thought that was calling out the fans without calling out the fans, because he didn't say anything about the fan support. He specifically talked about the student section. So in my head, I'm like, oh, he's wanting to call out the fans too. Well, he did. And I'm glad he did, because to me, if you're a fan of this team and this program, where are you? I am so sick and tired of walking into CQ and seeing these absolutely pathetic turnouts. And not from the student section, like we said, like years past, that's been an issue. The students are crushing it right now. They're coming out, they're doing their job, they're doing what they're supposed to do. I'm disappointed in you, the general public, the Terrapin Club members, the alumni, all of the quote unquote fans. Where are you? What's it going to take to get you out to the games? We've heard all the excuses over the years, and to me, none of them are good enough anymore. Oh, ticket prices are too high to watch them lose. First off, breaking news, this team's not losing anymore. In case you haven't noticed, they've been to back-to-back bowl games. Not only gone, but won both of them. Well, enjoy your Pinstripe and Duke's Mayo Bowls every year. As opposed to what? As opposed to what? Rose Bowls and national championships? Like, when was that ever the norm that those expectations are now your bar? We're not Alabama. We're not Ohio State, but we are a lot closer now than prior regimes. So spare me with the whole put a winning product out there and we'll show up. Not to mention, you are missing out on the greatest quarterback statistically to ever don a Terps uniform. You can make the point of saying Boomer Esiason and Frank Reich were better quarterbacks, whatever. I'll listen to that. But statistically, the stats back it up. He is the best quarterback in our history to ever don a uniform, and now he's a senior. How much longer does he have? He's only got a few more games out there for you to go out there and see him. Get out there and see him. Secondly, no, the prices aren't too high. Before the season started, you could get season tickets for $99 a fucking seat for the entire season. I think $250 was for the best seats in the house.
Googs bought a ticket for $5 last week.
That's what I was getting ready to say. I just looked on third-party sites, and you can buy tickets for Indiana for $6 right now. So pricing isn't the issue. well, weekly night games are hard to get to on time. Then plan accordingly.
Be an adult.
Be an adult. It's not every game. There was one Friday night home game this season. Kickoff was 7 p.m., and the majority of fans didn't arrive in their seats until midway through the first quarter. A night game where you get to show off the new lights, the audio video stuff to its best of its ability, a game on national TV with stars in attendance, and what that team got to run out of the shell to was pathetic outside of the students. I guarantee you, though, if there was a bulletin put out that Starbucks was giving away free coffee by the White House, but you have to be there by 7 p.m., there'd be thousands of people in line on time, or I don't know, maybe even show up early for it. I just don't understand where the expectations are so high that these are your stances and excuses for not showing up. Did they win 9 or 10 games a few times in the 70s and 80s and early 2000s? Yep, they even won 11 a couple times. Well, they're on the cusp of that again, looking to go 5-0 this week and 14-5 in their last 19 conference game, which is 4th in the big overall. What Coach Locks right now and staff have put together in 5 years is fun to watch. It's an entertaining product that is building the local recruiting trail back up again with a program that prior to him arriving had quite the black eye, if you remember, quite the shiner, right?
Preach.
And here's the thought. Maybe having a true home field advantage would actually make a difference. I don't know. Ask the kids how much a packed house would mean to them. Show up and show love to this team. Stop with the excuses. Yeah. I'm done with it.
Absolutely done with it. I'm glad you went off. I mean, I've been going off more and more online to individual people that whine and complain, but we need more than that. Like you said, even the ones that are there aren't doing it right. Like, be selfish for yourself. They've improved the product. Go see all the product. You pay one price for the game. See the whole thing. Be there for the pregame. If you don't know the sound of the Omar whistle, you're showing up too late.
Yep.
I don't care. I don't care if you've been going for 30 years and you've done the same thing and we always top the tailgate at kickoff. I don't care. You're doing it wrong now. It's better. You need to be there. You need to see the presentation.
Accordingly.
The players don't need to be running out of the stands and seeing bleachers. It doesn't matter what it looks like in the second quarter. It matters what it looks like when the tunnel entrance happens, not even kickoff. I wish the Terps would just start lying about when kickoff time is. Just put the wrong time down because everybody seems to think I should get to my seats exactly at kickoff. I need to, the perfect way to be a fan is to show up and not waste 1 second in the parking lot or 1 second of commute or 1 second of whatever they're doing at home and get my butt to the seat as the ball goes in the air. It's wrong. That means you're 15 minutes late. It's not. Listen, you're not there on time. That's not what on time is.
One less shot 30 and get into the stadium 30 minutes ahead of time. I just don't understand. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, I was so critical during that Virginia game when they ran out of the shell, and I'm like, man, this stadium is
embarrassing.
I mean, it was like 25% at that time, and I'm like, this is awful. Again, here it is. On a national televised, view, it's already going to be bad because Virginia didn't show out on their side, and we all know the cameras aim on that side anyway. So we're already dealing with that. The only area that's packed is the damn student section, and thank you to the students again.
And thank you to Fox for just continually panning the same section of students.
Yeah,
it looked like a wall of humanity.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just it's pathetic. And you're right. It was midway through the first quarter or almost the second quarter before you finally felt like, okay, the fans are here. So they're there. Just show up 30 minutes earlier. That's it. And you're selling yourself so short on so much of the experience, right? Like
everything.
They just invested all this money into this whole new production it started with the video board and the audio system, and now they've got the lights and all this stuff. Like, I don't understand why you don't want to see these things. You don't want to be involved with these things. Like, it just makes no sense to me. Like, even when I go to the Ravens games, right? I get there at the ass crack of dawn to tailgate for 4 or 5 hours and drink some beers and all that stuff. But I always make sure that I'm in there before the national anthem. I'm in there before player introductions. I'm in there before all that because that's part of the entertainment value for me.
It's what you paid for.
All that. Right. It's like it's like fucking watching a movie and going into it 20 minutes into it and getting straight to the plot instead of like the buildup that goes to it. That takes away from everything with the movie. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like just get there.
The previews are part of the movie. It's enjoyable to see. You sit next to your person you're there with and go, "Are we going to watch that? Are we going to watch that?
Or
are we
that?
Watch
Yeah,
that?"
exactly.
Like, it's all part of it. I mean, if you have nosebleed seats and you want to come down on the visiting sidelines, there hasn't been anybody to stop you. Come watch player warm-ups and then go back up to your seats.
Right.
Like there's all kinds of things you can do in there. The experience is good. The music's good. The food's better than it's ever been. So just get there. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't know what we're doing. And on top of that, if you are there already, if you are me and Fred, if you've been standing there before all of the times, especially before the tunnel entrance a second time, by the way, guys, the Terps are on the field for like an hour before the game.
Right.
Like, the whole time. Then they leave, and then they come back. Frankly, if you've never seen them leave and get all confused, then you haven't been there early enough. But I'll give you a pass if you get there before they enter from the tunnel. But there's so much to see. And if you are us and you are there, I think we're to a point where we now have a responsibility to start giving shit to people in person. Like, when you're walking to the stadium and there's still people tailgating, I think it's fine to turn to a stranger and be like,
Wrap
bro,
it up.
it's time to get in there. We
Wrap
need to
it
be
up.
there for the entrance. These kids deserve it.
100%.
Like, giving people a hard time because this is all became so acceptable. It's been acceptable to show up late. It's been acceptable to only show up to the big games. It's been acceptable to leave early if we're down or if we're up by too many points, whatever the hell that magic math number is. It's acceptable to miss when there's bad weather. Well, tell people it's not acceptable. Be there. Like,
Yep.
You don't have to be mean about it. Just be like, hey, it's time to go. These boys need to not see bleachers. I want to
agree.
see people on the bleachers. Like, it's just time to stop being nice. It didn't work. It hasn't worked. So, Loxley, like you said, has been escalating. The week one, he talked about the students and left out the people. That wasn't a big enough clue. This week, he mentions directly the people, but isn't very harsh. I don't want to see this man have to
We'll
go
do it
off
for you, Lox.
like Fred about you. So get there. Just cover up the silver. Look, I don't want to have them have to come and paint all the fucking bleachers black because you guys can't figure out how to get into the stadium. It's hot enough the way it is.
It's
We
ridiculous.
don't need any more.
It's ridiculous. And rant. Let's stop there because
Sure, we could have a whole
trust
episode
me,
just on
I
that.
could literally go on for another hour about it if I really wanted to, but trying not to be super negative here, right? Because things are very good, right? I'm not, again, this isn't any kind of negative shot towards anything other than the fan support. Let's move forward to this Indiana game because, again, this would give the Terps their first 5-0 start in a very long time, make you feel real good about being 2-0 in the conference, going into the big boys. This is a game, like I said earlier, Terps should roll. Terps should win. They're heavy favorites in this game, 2 touchdown favorites. How are you feeling going into this Indiana game?
I'm feeling pretty damn good. This is gonna be one of those ones. If you lose, it's just a complete shocker, a complete letdown. I don't think we're good enough yet for a trap game. So I think that there shouldn't be an overlooking of a Big Ten. So I don't think that the players think that they're too good for this. So hopefully we won't have any of those issues. We've also seen them already experience kind of the trap scenarios with both Virginia and Charlotte scoring 14 early and them being asleep. So I think they already know how that feels and they don't want to do it again. I do have my worries, but I don't think that losing is going to be one of them.
Okay. Well, as far as matching up, right? So this Indiana offense mostly is going to come at you on the ground. Their quarterback, Taven Jackson, I think they have like 2 touchdowns through the air offensively all year. The rest of their touchdowns have all been on the ground this year. So if they're going to come at you, it's going to be on the ground. And that's right now has been our biggest hole, I think, on defense has been our run defense. So hopefully, with that, we can get that figured out. That's my 2 biggest things that I want to see in this game. The improvement on the run defense and the improvement on the run blocking on offense, getting back to Hemby being able to be a big integral part and getting the yardage that we all expect him to get, and all of the backs being able to run through holes like they should, and getting that 4, 5, 6 yards a carry. And because all that does is benefit the passing offense as well, right? When you don't have to sit back and just wait for the pass and they have to play in the box and your running game is a threat to them, that's just going to open things up and makes Leah's job a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's my guess how this week goes. I kind of feel like they're going to like let the dogs out. Like this offensive line needs to go maul and just run the ball again and again, make them stop it. You could see multiple 100-yard gainers out of that backfield. I don't know whether it's 2 or 3, but you could see an awful lot of yardage coming out of that backfield. And then you kind of save that perfect balanced game for your big dog you're facing next to mix in the running game, mix in your explosive wide receivers, and kind of just put that whole game together that you will need for a team of that caliber.
I agree. Well, you're looking at a 2-2 Indiana team on the year. Their 2 wins, Indiana State, 41-7, and then an overtime, a 4 overtime thriller last week against 1-3 Akron. Can you guess what their 1 win was? Like, they've got literally 1 win on the year. They were, Indiana was able to knock them off, but that's their 2 wins. They have losses against Purdue, Ohio State, 23-3, and they lost to Louisville, 21-14. So I like our chances. I do like our chances to cover 14. I think the points in this game over under is 50, I believe, in this game. How do you feel about that? 50 total points.
Honestly, I kind of feel like the under on that because I don't think Indiana is going to score on us either. I mean, they put 3 against Ohio State. What are you going to give them? Maybe 7-10 against the Terps? Okay, so let's get into our predictions then. Where do you see this game shaking out, score wise? 38-10. We've been floating right around that 38 number. I don't see that changing much. That's kind of seems to be our baseline. No matter whether we score 0 or 21 points in the first quarter, you still score right there. So I think the 38 and the 10 again, they earn a field goal and you slip up on something stupid, gets you to that 10. I don't think they're much better than that. They could be a lot worse than that. We could pitch our first shutout. God knows, I don't know how late that 3 points was they scored against Ohio State. If that's a garbage time field goal, I feel even better. I didn't. I don't think that it's going to be much of a competition. The only worry I do have is a similar start to Charlotte, where we have the familiarity here with their offensive coordinator, Walt Bell, their co-OC, Coach Anthony Tucker, and their linebacker and DC coach, Chad Wilt, all being previous Maryland assistants.
That's right.
And we faced a previous Maryland assistant in Charlotte, and I swear to God, he knew the entire script, because after we got out of the script, we destroyed them. And in the script, they owned us. And so I just hope that those things are fixed. I would beg Loxley to just stay out of the script this week and let somebody that was not here with them at all handle it.
Rewrite the script.
Yeah, and then you can weigh in as much as you want later when they're not fully expecting it.
I think Loxley's smart enough to learn from his mistakes, and obviously that was a mistake going into Charlotte. So that really doesn't worry me. I think this game is going to mirror a lot of what we just saw at Michigan State. So much so that I'm going to go with a mirror score here. I'm going to go 31-9 is where I see this game being. Just the same thing that they did against Michigan State. I don't see Indiana getting any touchdowns in this game. I think that we have that kind of bend but don't break defense. Maybe we give up a couple field goals. They get 9 points. So I think the Terps will roll in this. Like I said, I really want to see the running game get back to what we know it can be. I want to see, Leah stay upright again 2 games in a row without any sacks. That would be great. So I think this is going to be a good building block towards getting into some of those tougher games as we get through into the heavy part of our Big Ten schedule. So I really want to see all that stuff kind of gel together.
Akron, known only for LeBron James, put up 475 yards.
Yeah.
Over under 500 for the Terps. That's a huge number. But honestly, if they put out the stat line for DraftKings, it's going to be in the high 4s.
I'll take the over on that because, again, we're home. I like Leah at home. I'm
love that.
hoping the fans show out for this game.
If it's over 5, I'm going to go ahead and guarantee you have 300-yard rushers and a 200-yard Talia.
I haven't looked yet, but the only hesitation I would have would be weather. So if it's a rainy, shitty weather,
Friday and be fine Saturday, but we all know how that works in Maryland.
Okay, if it's okay weather, if it's clear and it's not pouring down rain or anything, I'll take the over on that. I like 50 over.
Yeah, this is the only game that I won't be tailgating for. We're going down to Oceans Calling on Friday for the OAR concert. So I will be commuting from Ocean City to the football game like old times when I commuted from Salisbury University every Saturday in the fall. So quit your excuses and get to the game.
That's right. Exactly. Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Thank you for yet another episode and listening to another episode. If you ever want to be a part of the show or you want to hear your questions read on the show, send them to us. Send them to us on social media. You can follow us on Twitter or X, whatever the hell you want to call it now, at Shell and Tell Pod. You can send us emails at shellandtellpod@gmail.com. If you want to send them to us directly, you can send them to Ryan at TerpsBEspert. You can send them to me at FredBLBS. Ryan, sign us off.
If you don't believe yet, if your friends don't believe, I don't know what's going to take to get you there, but I can tell you what, Fox does. What is it? GJ Cal. God, dude. Fox believes. They took us off of Peacock. Nobody wants to buy another shitty streaming service, right? Everyone looked for the schedule and was worried about it. Well, it's gone. You're now at primetime, the #1 spot for Fox football. Big noon kickoff.
Hey-o.
Noon games suck at home, but they're great on the road. I have the rest of my afternoon to deal with it, my evening to have a good time.
Yep.
Well, let's just hope that their fans are a little slow on a noon kickoff because they're not used to not being in primetime spotlight. Well, I doubt it because they're Ohio State fans. They'll probably do a better job than we are. But what I need from you is to not let that be us this week. Make us wrong. There are not a lot of things to complain about. These recruits come in every week, and we've answered all the problems except for one. You and your friends. We need you to get down there. If you are still watching this podcast, you are probably not the problem because you would have hung up on Fred 20 minutes ago when he was mid-rant. But me and you now need to be part of the solution. We need to get in people's ear. We need to make people know this is not acceptable. Get on social medias. Get in people's faces at the parking lot and just be like, guys, they deserve better. Let's get in there. You don't need to be aggressive about it. Just mention it. If you mention it while walking by every game to 3 or 4 new people and 6 or 7 happen to hear you around, great. That's how you get these things started and make it unacceptable to be sitting here when you hear the cannons go off as they're running in the stadium and hurry up and walk over. I'm done with it. I'd like the students there a little bit earlier. I'd like the fans there a lot a bit earlier. Get down there, find some friends, give some people hell, and let's go Terps. Hell in a Shell needs to be real. Here's to wishing all is well under the shell.